Let me. So we are looking at what? Proper sentence construction and what? Accurate interpretation of percentage. This particularly is good for individuals who are preparing for IELTS academic task 1. You must learn to construct sentences that reflect accurate interpretation of percentage information on your chart. Now, when it comes to academic task 1, we have different types of questions. We have maps and we have process charts. I'm not talking about maps and process charts in this lesson. Okay? We have those ones, but I'm not talking about them. What I want to talk about is what we call data-based charts. There are 5 of them: line graphs, bar charts, pie charts, tables, and combination charts. So the 2 examples that we have on the screen here, these ones are called line graphs. These 2 examples are called what? They are called line graphs. This is just one of the 5 types of database charts that you are going to see in IELTS academic task 1 writing. Line graphs. Now, your data can be presented as raw figures, or they can be presented as percentage figures. Those are the 2 ways to present data in IELTS writing. Is either they will give you the data as what? Raw figures, or they will give you as what? Percentage figures. So if you look at this first chart here on the left side, participation by club members, you can see that they wrote percent of club members. What does that mean? That means that they have presented data to us in what? In percentage figures. Data is in percentages. The way you're going to construct your sentences here, when you are writing a report based on this particular chart, will be different from the way you write your report if you are writing on this one on the right side. This right side is not, the data on this right side is not in percentages. We have raw figures. Look at it. The graph below shows the hospital admissions for 5 hospitals. Can you see that they did not write percentage here? 300, 250, 200, 150, 100, 50. They didn't write percentages there. So what does that mean? What this thing is telling me is that what? 50 people were admitted to the hospital. 100 people were admitted to the hospital. 150 people were admitted to the hospital. 200 people were admitted to the hospital. 250 people were. That's it. That's the interpretation. Raw figures. Raw figures are usually easy to figure out. The one people struggle with is what? The one that involves percentages. Okay, so the first problem some people, the first mistake, let me put it that way, that some people make is that when they want to quote figures for percentages, instead of saying 10%, they will say 10 people participated, 20 people participated, 30 people. No. That's wrong. That is the first thing I want to take note of. You cannot say, if you see figures in percentages on your chart, when you write on that chart, don't remove the percentage. Include the percentage in whatever you're writing. So instead of saying in 1995, 5 people participated in gym activities. No, you can't say 5 people. What you should say is what? 5% of club members. They've written it for you on the y-axis. This thing is a guide. 5% of club members. That's how you should write it. 5% of club members. That's accurate what? Accurate use of percentage data. Hope you are following me. Let me see. If you are following me, let me see your message. Drop a message and say, I am following you. I am following you. Let me know who is following me so far. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we must learn to interpret percentages correctly. So the focus of this lesson is percentage charts. Okay. So the examples I'm going to show you going forward will be examples that have to do with what? Percentage figures. So anytime you see your question in IELTS academic task 1, one of the first things you want to check is what? Do we have raw figures or do we have percentage figures? If you see that you have percentage figures, then you need to take time to study that chart carefully and make sure you interpret the percentage correctly. Okay? Now, let's look at this second slide here. Let's look at this second slide here. What is our interpretation of this percentage? What is our, the figure is in percentages. You can see 10, 20, 30, 40%, 50%, 60%, 70%, 80, the highest is 80%. Okay? So let's interpret correctly here. Let me show you. I'm going to show you so many examples. Then we'll go to a particular quiz. And then we're going to look at that quiz. We're going to look at somebody answer that quiz. And then I will use this as an opportunity to do some corrections based on that quiz. And then you will understand better. Now look at what this title says. Free time activities of the elderly in the United States from 1980 to present. Free time activities. In other words, the things that elderly people did during their free time. So what happened is this. This thing I'm doing now is what I mean when I say take time to study. So you do it quietly, but I'm going to do it out loud so that you can understand what you're supposed to be doing. Okay? Study the charts whenever you see that it's in percentages. Now, this thing is about what? Elderly people. That's number one. This chart is about what? It's about elderly people. Elderly people in which country? United States. Okay? It's about who? Elderly people in which country? The United States. Very, very important. Now, what does this? Let's pick this first one here. This one that is close to the bottom here, 1980. Okay? It represents surfing the internet. Okay? And it's somewhere halfway between 0 and 10. That means it's about 5%. That means it's about what? 5%. Okay? That's what this particular point is going to be. That means it's about what? 5%. So what does this mean? What it basically means is that in the 1980s, let me type it out. I'm interpreting, I already mentioned that this graph is about elderly people in the United States. So what is my interpretation of this 5% that I've circled here? How do I construct the sentence for it? In the 1980s. Notice that that's where they wrote it. They did not say it's not 1980. 1980s refers to from 1980 to 1989. It's a period of 10 years. It's a decade. So we say in the 1980s, 5% of elderly people in the United States surfed the internet during their free time. That's how to interpret. I want you to notice something here, ladies and gentlemen. Notice that here they wrote surfing the internet. When I wrote what did I write? Surfed the internet. That's grammar. You cannot write that 5% of the elderly people in the United States surfing the internet. No. That's bad grammar. So there are times that you will see some things on your charts, and then when you want to write it, you're going to need to use other forms of that word. Like in this case now, instead of writing surfing is a verb, present continuous tense. But because I'm writing in past tense, in constructing my sentence, I want to write in past tense. I need to change surfing to what? To surfed. In the 1980s, 5% of the elderly people in the United States surfed the internet during their free time. Very straightforward. Now, based on what I just did now, I want you guys to construct a sentence for this. Let me see who will get this right. A sentence that is similar to what I just wrote now. I want you to construct a sentence for this place here. Let me circle it. Color black. This place that I've circled color black, construct a sentence for it. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Construct a sentence for this place that I've circled color black. Type out the sentence and post it in the Zoom chat. Post it in your chat, or you can write it in your book or something. Just write a sentence for this thing, similar to what I just did now. Similar. I want it to be the only thing that will change is just the percentage figure and what they did. Those are the two things that will change. Every other thing is the same thing as what I wrote. Let me see. Let me test you guys. So, who has done something? I want you to write a sentence for this gray one. This one, yeah, I will not say more than that. I'm not going to say more than that. I'm going to wait for 3 or 4 answers. 3 or 4 answers. And then I'm going to continue after that. Just, I want to see who understands what I just wrote so far. Okay? I'm seeing some answers already. Very good. Thank you. I'll just pick the first 3. I will not speak everything. I'll just pick the first 3. I'll just read them out. Okay, somebody here says in 1980s, 50% of the aged people were in the theater. There's a big error there. I'm going to score that person band 6. I'm going to explain my reasons later. I'll correct everything later. Let me read 4, and then I will now correct them again. Another person says in the 1980s, 50% of the elderly in the United States went to the theater. Thank you very much. I love this. This is very good. This is like a band 7.5 or maybe even band 8.0. Very good. Now, this next person says in the 1980s, but this person is 1980s. The person now, let me show you how the person wrote 1980s. The person wrote 1980s like this. In the 1980s. No. Please don't make that mistake of putting apostrophe. Notice that they did not put apostrophe in their own. Okay? So these are little mistakes you need to avoid that cause people to score band 6. And you know, these are our IELTS examiners are very, very strict. So in the 1980s, 50% of the elderly people in the United States, this person did not put STATES, did not put S. United is not capital U. State is not capital S. You are not respecting the United States. They are going to steal your marks. You must write the spellings correctly, proper nouns. Okay? This is why I said 50% of elderly people in the United States visited the theater during their free time. Okay, so I think I pointed out the correction with this one now. The 1980s, the use of apostrophe is wrong. The United States, not properly spelled. Another person said in the 1980s, 50% of the elderly people in the United States went to the theater in their free time. Thank you very much. This is also a very good one. This is like a band 7.5, band 7.0. Another person said in the 1980s, 50% of the elderly people went to the theater. The person now put a comma. That comma is not necessary. Absolutely unnecessary. Did you notice that my own comma only showed up after 1980? I didn't put comma anywhere else. Is intentional. But you put comma in your own. I don't know where you got your comma from. My comma is not in my own. So where did you get your comma from? That comma is not necessary. Okay? We call it comma splice. We don't want it in English. Poorly used comma. Poorly placed comma. Please avoid it. Another person said in the 1980s, 50. So this person spelled out the percent. P-E-R-C-E-N-T. I wonder why people do that. I don't know why they don't like using symbol. They use symbol in the chat. So why don't you want to use the symbol? I prefer to use symbol. Okay? In the 1980s, 50% of elderly people used the theater. You don't use theater, you go to the theater. Theater is not a machine. Theater is not a mobile phone. Theater is not a computer. It's a building where you watch movies. You don't use it. You go there to go and watch something, to go and watch movies. So please, your vocabulary must be correct. Somebody said spent their free time in the theater. Very good. That's okay. Spent their free time. That's okay. You went there. So please, our English must be as accurate as possible. So what is our answer here? Let me just type out the most accurate answer. In the 1980s, 50% or another, nobody used this one. Half. We can also say half. That's vocabulary. Half of the elderly individuals in the United States went to the what? Cinema. I can also say cinema or theater. Cinema during their what? Free time. Or during their what? Leisure time. That's it. proper construction of sentence. So if you get the first sentence right, that same pattern is what you should use as you continue describing the remainder of that same line. So this gray line now, let me finish it up. I will now say that word, this figure reduced to what? 30% after 30% in the what? 1990s. But it rose to 40% in the 2000s and further to what? About 45% in the what? 2010s. That's it. This thing I just wrote here now, I have described everything in the gray line. Everything represented by what? By going to theater. I've described it and I've used my percentages accurately. Notice I did not say the rates increased to, don't use words like that. When it comes to writing data based on percentages, is either you use percentage or you use fraction or you use what? Proportion. Don't use rates. Rate does not always fit in. Sometimes it can be used, but most times you can't use it. You can only use rates if on the question, on the chart, they use the word rate. But if they did not use rate, don't bother using it when you're writing your report. Don't use frequency. Don't use number. Some people will say number. The number increased to, no, it's not the number. It's like you say the fraction increased, the proportion increased, the percentage increased, or you say the figure increased. Yeah, I wrote the figure increased. I did not say the number. I did not say the amount. These are things that reflect what? Accurate interpretation of what? Of percentages. Okay? Let me take one or two questions. Somebody asks, if you have a question, just type your question in the chat box. If you have a question, just type your question in the chat box and then I'm going to attend to your question. Somebody said, if you have a question, just type it. Don't bother saying that you have a question. Just type it. Just type your question. Just type your question, I will answer. Okay? So, let's move on. Let's move on to another example. Accurate. So this example is a very straightforward example. Okay, very straightforward example. And then what's it called? Let's move on to another example now. Let's move on to another example now. Okay. Look at this one here. Proportion of population aged 65 and over. That is the title of this chart. And we have 3 countries here. That means that they are talking about what? Population of Japan, population of Sweden, population of what? Population of USA. 3 countries. What is the proportion of Japan that was what? 65 years and above. This graph shows us the population. What is the population of Sweden that was 65 years and above? This graph shows us. Okay, the proportion of the population. Now, how do I construct my sentences for this? Let's pick this first one. Let's pick this first one. Let me draw a line on it. Let me draw a line around it. This first one here. We can say this is about maybe 9. Okay? 9%. Remember that this figure is in percent. They've already written percent here. That means all the figures here are in percent. 30%, 25%, 20%, 15%, 10%, 5%. So 9%. What does that mean? It means that what? In 1940, let me write it out. Let me type it out. In 1940, comma, can you see that? In 1940, about 9% of which country is this? This is Japan. Japan is the first one. So I'm going to pick, no, sorry. This line is bold. So this line should be USA. This line is thicker. So this line should be. That's what I believe. That line is bold. The last one, the line at the bottom is thin. So that one should be for Japan. So let's construct a sentence for this USA. Okay. Let me type it out. I hope you are hearing me. If you are hearing me, let me know. Drop a message and say, yes, I'm hearing you. Let me see who's still hearing me. If you are still hearing me, let me see your message. Can you hear me? All right, thank you very much. So here it says that what? In 1940, about 9% of the population of the United States was what? 65 years and above. Can you see? 9% of what? Of the population of the United States. Okay, that's how you write it. Proper interpretation of percent. That is proportion of population. 9% of the population. Okay, I just put the to show that I'm referring to a specific country. 9% of the population. I did not say 9% of the elderly people. I did not say 9% of the elderly people. That's wrong interpretation, wrong percentage use. Okay, so let's that's proper use of what? Of percentages. Our sentences must be what? Must be accurately constructed. Okay, so in writing, in describing this graph, let me say something here to address a question. Somebody is asking a question. The person says that, are we writing from the highest to the lowest point in the two different paragraphs? I don't really understand this question, but let me try and say something that should address this question. If you want to write a report based on this chart now, I will first of all write about USA. Why? Because USA was the highest at the beginning. So I would describe USA. I will say that, okay, in 1940, the proportion of the population of the US that was 65 years and above was what? 9%. This figure increased slightly to 10% in 1960 and further to 15% in 1980. After 1980, however, there was a slight drop to what? To about 14% in 2020. But afterwards, the figure increased. And by 2040, my tenses will change now, my tenses. 2040 is in the future. And by 2040, the proportion of the population of US that will be 65 years and above will be about 24%. I have just described US. After describing US, I will now go to the next one, which is what? Sweden. I will do the same thing for Sweden and describe it all the way till the end. Okay? And then I will now go to what? Japan and describe Japan all the way till the end. That's what we call good cohesion. Take the first one, describe it all the way till the end. Preferably, start with the category that had the highest figure at the beginning. Okay? Start with that category. And then after that, move to the next one, just like I did. I said I'll move to Sweden. And then after that, move to Japan. That's how to demonstrate good cohesion. That's how to demonstrate good cohesion. I hope you get my point. Let me see. If you understand my point, let me see. If you understand what I just said now, I want you to drop a message in the chat box. Do you understand what I just said now? Somebody said, that did I get 9%? Look at it here. Can you see 10? I hope you can see 10 here. What is just below 10? Can you tell me what is below 10? The person that asked me, how did I get 9%? Can you tell me what is below 10? What is before 10? What do you get before 10? Is it 6? Is it 5? What should be here? What do you think should be here? If you're asking me, how did I get 9? Now, this is 10. This line is for 10. This line is for 15. Now, we are looking for this one here. This particular line here. This particular point. What should be the figure for this place? Tell me, is it 6 or 7 or 4? That's how I got my, what's it called? My 9%. Okay? I hope you understand. That is how we got our 9%. That is how we got our 9%. So before 10, you must get 9. And then 8 will be somewhere here. 7 will be somewhere here. 6 will be somewhere here. And then here we have 5. Okay? So accurate word. Accurate selection of your figures. You must select your figures accurately. Let me check for another question. Any other question? Let me see. Can we try it? Yes, you can try it now. You can. I'm going to post the question in the group so that you can try it later, but not now. Because of our time. Coach, I thought you compared the distinguishing features of the countries and not talking about each separately. I don't understand this question. You are describing. The question tells you to what? The question tells you to describe, summarize, and where is it? Look at it here. Let me show you. The question says, summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparison where relevant. Okay? So what are we to do here? You report the main features of what? Of the first country, USA. Then you report the main features of the second country, Sweden. And as you are reporting the one for Sweden, you can now compare Sweden with what? With the USA. Okay, I'm gonna do that very soon so that you see what I mean. Let me show you what I just said now. I'm going to make this smaller so that I will have more space to write what I want to write. So if you want it to be bigger, just double tap on your phone, just double tap on your screen and the thing will become bigger. Because I know some people will say the thing is tiny. I've told you the solution to that now. Just double tap on your screen and it's going to become bigger. Now look at what I want to do here now. I'm going to write for USA and Japan. I will write what I said earlier on. And then I will write for Sweden too. And then I will do that thing where it says make comparison. Make comparison. Now look at it. In 1940, okay, about 9% of the population of the United States was what? Was above what? 65 years. This figure, full stop, notice I put full stop there. This figure increased slightly to 10% after 20 years. And further to what? 15% in what? In 1980. In 1980. 1980. However, there was a slight decline. There was a slight drop afterwards. And a fraction of what? About 14% was recorded in what? 2020. By 2040, it is expected that let's say 24%, that about 24% of people in the, I'm trying to vary my vocabulary, of people in the United States will be what? 65 years and above. I've finished describing US. Now let me describe, what's it called? Let me describe Sweden. Sweden is the one in the broken line. This broken line here, that is just below US, that's Sweden. Now I want you to take note of how I'm going to do my comparison here of the order. Don't demonstrate comparison at the expense of cohesion. You have to make sure that the two are adequately addressed. So let's go through that US thing again. Okay, so I'll say that word. In 1940, like I said, I would start with the first category. the category that was the highest at the beginning of the period. And here it's the United States. Sorry, this question looks incomplete. Let me copy the complete thing. Let me copy the complete thing so that we will not miss out and be wondering what is going on. Okay. So this is a complete thing here. Okay. It looks tiny, but you can just double tap on your screen so that you can see it if you want to see the text. So in 1940, about 9% of the population of the United States was what? Was 65 years and above. This figure increased slightly to what? 10% in 1960 and further to what? 15% in what? 1980. Okay, this figure increased further to what? To 15% in what? 1980. However, there was a slight decline afterwards. Okay, and in 2020, a figure, let me say a fraction of 14% was reported. Okay, by 2040, it is expected that the proportion of people above 65 years in the United States will be about what? Let's say this figure here. This is about, let's say 24%. Will be about 24%. Okay? So I finished describing US. That's what I mean by good. You take one country, describe it all the way till the end. Okay? You take one country and do what? Describe it all the way to the end. After that, you now move to another country. The trend, what's it called? The trend for Sweden, the trend for what? Sweden is expected, or let me put it this way, as followed. The trend for Sweden followed a similar pattern. Followed a pattern similar to that of the United States. This first sentence I wrote here, I'm already doing comparison. That place where it says make comparison relevant. By saying similar, I'm already what? I'm already making comparison. Now let me go further. Follow the pattern similar to what? Similar to what? To that of the United States. In 1940, I want to give detail now. About 7% of Swedish people were 65 years and above. Okay? The figure, just let me compare again. I want to write the sentence to compare again. Just as was reported for the United States, the fraction of elderly people in Sweden increased. Okay? Let me make this smaller so that I can see the graph well. The fraction of what? Elderly people in the United States increased to what? Increased to about what? About 9% in 1960 and further to what? to 14% in what? 1980. Slightly lower than what was reported for the what? United States. Can you see the way I'm comparing already now? Do you notice I did not talk about Sweden in the first graph? In the first paragraph. Don't bother. Talk about one country. Finish it. And like I said, preferably start with the biggest one, the one that had the biggest figure at the beginning of the period. After finishing with that country, now move to the next country. And then as you are describing it, you cannot be comparing it to the first country. That's good cohesion. So I'm demonstrating cohesion. I am also comparing, and I'm using my percentages correctly. Very, very important. So slightly lower. This is a word that indicates what? That I'm comparing. Slightly lower. Similar to. That's another word that indicates that I'm what? That I'm comparing. Just as was reported for the United States. That's another clause that indicates what? Comparison. Okay? Let's go on. Let me finish it up. So slightly lower than what was reported for the what? United States. The figure reduced slightly after about 5 years. The figure reduced slightly 5 years later. Somebody says, how did I arrive at 5 years later? Let me show you. Let me make this a little bit bigger and show you that 5 years later. Look at this thing here. I'm coming. Let me pick my highlighter here. Look at this place here. Can you see that this thing is reducing here? It reduced there. Okay? So if we bring this line down, it looks like it's about, let me see, 1980 to 2000. How many years? That's 20 years. So this is not 5 years. This is actually about 10 years. 10 should be somewhere here. 10 should be somewhere here. So let's say 12 years. 12 years. So that thing should be 12 years, not 5 years. Can you see the way I've analyzed this thing? About 5 years later. Instead of 5 years, I should have written 12 years later. About 12 years later. The figure reduced slightly 12 years later. Okay? But afterwards, an increase was what? Reported. And by 2000, the fraction of elderly people in Sweden surpassed that of the what? United States. What have I done here again? I've done comparison. Surpassed that of the United States. What have I done again? I've done comparison. Can you see I'm doing comparison now? So the person I was thinking about comparing and mixing everything up. No, don't mix it up. You see the way I'm treating them separately, taking them country by country. That's how to demonstrate good cohesion. Okay, now let's look at this one here. This point where the thing reached a peak. Let's call it a peak, sort of. Where's my line? So let's draw that same line that I drew earlier on. So from here, let's just try and draw a straight line. This one looks like 12 again. It's not 10. It looks like 12. It's not halfway through. 10 should be somewhere here. So this one looks like 12 or 13. So we say that what? 20 plus 12, that's 2012. So it reached a peak in 2012. So I'm going to write it that way. We are not exact, but at least we are close. It's definitely not 2020. Okay? So somebody that says 2012 is still better, is writing something that is more accurate compared to someone that says 2020. So I'll say that what? In 2020, the figure reached a peak of what? 20%, a slight decline to what? A slight decline occurred in what? Sorry, this one should be 2012. 2012. A slight decline occurred in 2020, but afterwards, it rose again. Hold on. I need to change my tenses. A slight decline occurred in 2020 when in fact, it's not even 2020. I'm saying it's further after 2020, maybe about 2021 or 2022. A slight decline occurred in 2022. Occurred in 2022. In 2020, the figure reached a peak of 20%, but a slight decline occurred in 2020 when about what? A slight decline occurred when the figure, a slight decline occurred, a slight decline, let me rephrase my sentence here. In 2012, the figure reached a peak of 20%, but by 2022, it reduced slightly to what? 18%. By 2040, it is expected, can you see my use of tenses? Okay, by 2040, it is expected that what? So, the fraction of elderly people in Sweden will reach what? Elderly people in Sweden will reach what? So this is 25%. Let's say 25%. Elderly individuals in Sweden will reach 25% greater than what will be reported for the United States. Can you see another comparison here? Greater than, I'm comparing. Comparing. And then after this, I will now write for what? I will now write for Japan. Okay? Let me start Japan. Unlike what was reported for Japan, I'm sorry, for the United States and Japan. Sorry, and Sweden. Okay? Japan had the lowest proportion of elderly people in 1940. Had the what? Lowest proportion of elderly individuals in what? 1940. But it will have the what? The largest proportion in what? In 2040. So you see what I just did here now. Japan had the lowest here, but by 2040 it's going to have the highest. So let me say, you see this place here where Japan overtook Sweden and US. So I'm going to put it inside that sentence now. So I'll say that word. So this period is between, let me make this bigger. Let me make this bigger. So it's going to be between, let's say 20, let me draw my line again so that we'll be sure. So this is the point where it starts overtaking them. So this is about 2030. Okay, so let's just approximate. We are not sure exactly, but let's just approximate. So by 2030, Japan will overtake them. That's what I'm saying here. So that's what I want to write. So I'll say that word. Japan. Japan had the lowest proportion of elderly individuals in the 1940. Okay? So when did it start increasing? The thing started increasing in 1980. Or let's say in 1990. So how do I put that in my sentence? Its figure reduced initially But after 1990, it started increasing. It is expected that the fraction of elderly Japanese will exceed. It is expected that by 2030, let me put it that way, the fraction of elderly Japanese will exceed that of elderly Americans and what's it called? Swedish Americans and Swedish nationals. Americans and Swedish, let me just put it that way. Swedish refers to people from Sweden. Okay? It will exceed, or let's say it will overtake. Let me put it that way. Overtake. In other words, it's going to overtake. It's going to overtake. That's what we are seeing in this graph here. It's going to, that overtaking happen from here all the way till here. Okay? And by 2040, it will be greater. It will be at what? That's 20. This thing looks like 27. Okay? By 2040, the country will have about 27% of its population within the age group of 65 years and above. 25% of its, 27% of its population. Ladies and gentlemen, I've finished writing this line graph. I've finished writing this line. The reports based on this line graph. And you see, I've demonstrated what? Vocabulary. I've demonstrated good vocabulary. I've also done comparison. All these parts that I underlined, they are meant to achieve this goal of what? Make comparison where relevant. At the same time, I demonstrated good cohesion. I took one country, described it. I started with the United States, and then I moved to Sweden. Why? Because United States was the biggest one at the beginning, followed by Sweden, followed by Japan. Okay? So look at my comparison in the third paragraph. Lowest proportion. Can you see another word that indicates comparison? Largest proportion, another word that indicates comparison. That's how you address this thing here. Okay? Overtake, that's another word to indicate what? Comparison. Okay? And then let me add one thing. By 2040, the common fever, let me add another thing here. Greater than the figures for what? The United States and Sweden. Another word for comparison here. Can you see? That's how you do this thing, ladies and gentlemen. Proper, what's it called? Use of percentage figures and demonstration of what? Accurate understanding of percentages. Hope you get my point. Let me know. If you understand my point so far, let me see. Drop a message in the chat box. Let me know whether you understand my explanation so far. Let me see you if you are still with me. If you are still with me, let me see your message. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So ladies and gentlemen, this is how you address questions like this. Somebody says, what if we have 20 countries on the charts? Somebody says, what if we have 1 million countries on the charts? What if we have 2 billion countries? Okay, calm down. If you got 20 million countries on the charts anyway. But let's assume you have maybe 10 countries on the charts. If you have 10 countries on your chart, let's say, we have 3 countries now, we have 10 countries. Your job is to what? Let me tell you what to do. This is what you are going to do. Let me write it out for you. To demonstrate good cohesion and follow that pattern. Identify the categories that's increased and write about them first. Then, in the next paragraph, identify the categories that reduced and write about them. Then the last paragraph, identify the categories that fluctuated and write about them. That's it. If you have more than, what's it called? If you have too many countries, let me just put it that way. This is how you do it. Just look for let's say we have 8 countries on the chart. Just look at, okay, which countries increased during the period? Maybe 4 of them increased. You take all the 4 countries and try and summarize what happened to them in paragraph 2. Okay, summarize them in paragraph 2. Paragraph 1 should be for introduction and overview. Okay, then paragraph 3, take the countries that reduced, write about them in paragraph 1, paragraph 3. Then if there's any country that fluctuated, maybe 1 country or 2 countries, write about that one in the word. Write about those ones in the last paragraph. That's it. That's how you deal with it. I hope I've addressed that question. The person I was asking about if you have many countries. I hope I've addressed that question. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on. Let's move on to, remember, our topic, our focus is actually percentage interpretation. So let me go back to 1 or 2. Let me go to the issue of percentage interpretation now. I want to take you to a particular quiz. A particular quiz that I shared some days ago. And then we're going to just do quick correction based on the answers that person gave. And then I'll use that to explain 1 or 2 things about percentage, using sentences correctly. Using sentences correctly. So this is the question here. I hope you guys are seeing this. Let me try and make it bigger. All right. So this person scored 14/22. Which of the following statements is true? Okay. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to take you through all the statements, and I will show you why the correct statement is true and why the wrong statement is wrong. And then I'll use that to explain 1 or 2 things about about this issue of percentage interpretation. So look at this here. We have a chart. This is a line graph, and data is in percentage. Notice what they wrote here. Percentage of age group. Percentage of age group. So let's look at the sentences one by one. The first one says what? 40% of people in the UK attended cinema in 1995. So this is 1995 here. This is 1995 here. Okay, this is 1995. All right. So 40% of people. What does it mean by people? Which people? We don't know the people. Okay, we don't know who these people are. So you see the problem with that first sentence here. Who are these people that is referring to? We don't know who they are. The chart gave us category, age groups. This first sentence does not tell us the age group. So you see the problem with sentence 1 is out of it. Anybody that picks sentence 1 has misinterpreted the whole thing. Now, sentence 2 is the correct one, but let's not look at sentence 2 yet. Let's look at sentence 3. Let's look at sentence 3. Sentence 3 says cinema attendance by people within the age group of 14 to 54 years was 40%. Now, look at this interpretation. Look at this sentence. Cinema attendance was 40%. Let me say that again. Cinema attendance was 40%. That statement is awkward. When I say awkward, this is what it means. It means that what you have said is confusing. It's giving somebody a headache. It's not clear. It's fake. It's mixed up. It's not accurate. That's the meaning of awkward. You have complicated it. You are trying to demonstrate vocabulary, but in your attempt to demonstrate vocabulary, you have caused confusion for yourself and for the examiner that is reading your sentence. Okay? 40% cinema attendance by people within the age group was 40. No. It's poor. What we have on this chart is very straightforward. Percentage of age group that attended cinema, that's what we have here. Percentage of 14 to 24 years that attended cinema, that's the first line here. Percentage of 24 to 34 that attended cinema, that's the second line here. So percentage of age group, very, very important. Age group in which country? In the UK. Those 3 things must come together. So this number 3 is very awkward. Number 42 is awkward. Attendance rate. Remember what I said earlier on? Avoid using this word rate. And if you don't see rate on the question, I can't say anything like rate here. So you don't need to use the word rate. Attendance rate by people within the age group of 44 to 54 years was 40%. No. Attendance rates cannot fit in. Okay? The fraction of people that attended is the best. The fraction of people that attended, I mean, something like that. Look at the last one. Look at the last one. 40 people in the UK. No, it's not 40 people. It's 40%. It's not 40 people. It's what? It's 40%. That is it. So you can't say 40 people. Answer cannot be 40 people. It is what? 40%. So the correct answer is going to be number 2. 40% of UK residents within the age group of 44 to 54 years. So where's 44 to 54 years? The one at the top. That's it here. 40% of what? Of individuals within the age group of, within UK residents, 40% of UK residents within the age group of what? 44 to 54 years attended cinema in 1995. I want to type another sentence that is coming to my head now, and then I will look at it and say whether it is correct. It's a little bit similar to that number 2. 40% of individuals in the UK within the age group. No, this is not what I want to write. This is what I want to write. 40% of individuals within the age group of 44 to 54 years. 40% of individuals within the age group of 44 to 54 years in the UK attended cinema. Okay? So I'll just put in the beginning. In 1995, okay? This is another way to write it. In 1995, this is another way to write this number 2 sentence that I just wrote now. In 1995, 40% of individuals within the age group of 44 to 54 years attended what? Attended, in 1995, 40% of individuals within the age group of 44 to 54 years. In 1995, 40% of individuals within the age group of 44 to 54 years in the UK attended cinema. I actually prefer this one. This one sounds better. This one that is on the website sounds better than the one that I just typed now. So that's that for number 1. Let's move on to, we are going to do 2 or 3 more, and then I'm going to wrap it up. These for the same thing. Okay, let me talk about this a little bit. This one is also another good one. Same graph. Let's look at the sentences one by one. UK residents within the age group of 44 to 54 years. So this purple is for 44 to 54 years at the top. Okay, UK residents within the age group of 44 to 54 years had the highest attendance rate. Remember what I said earlier on? Rate, that rate thing. Avoid it. If you don't see rate on the question, don't use it. That's why this number 1 is wrong, because it's confusing. Highest attendance rates. No. It might not be correct. That's not, if this graph is not about it's not about attendance rates. It's about the proportion that attended cinema. Attendance rate actually means something else. Okay? That's for statistics. Look at this next one. More people within the group of 44 to 54 years attended cinema. The problem with this second one is this word, more people. More people. It might not be more people. Percentage might not, having a high percent might not be the same thing as having more people. Okay, so we just stick to the figures that we have. Stick to percentage. Remember what I said earlier on that word. You should not change percentage to numbers. Anybody that writes more people has already done that thing, has changed percentage to numbers. So you cannot write more people. Okay, look at the next one. Compared to other age groups, this is the correct one. Greater proportion. Can you see what I said earlier on? When it comes to percentages, either you use percentage, proportion, or fraction. Those are the 3 things that you can use. Greater proportions of UK residents within the age group of 44 to 54 years attended cinemas throughout the period. That's it. That's accurate interpretation. Look at this number 4, also wrong. Cinema attendance increased in the age group of 44 to 54 years than in the other age groups. No, no, no. It did not increase than in the other age group. It also increased in the other age groups. So you cannot say it's increased than, and then that one is even sounding somehow. Increased than in the other age group is sounding somehow. This number 3 is still better. It conveys the idea more accurately. Okay, somebody says cinema attendance skyrocketed throughout the age group. No, 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 it did not skyrocket throughout the age group. It did not skyrocket throughout the age group. So these are sentences that people construct that reflect what? Wrong percentages. Wrong use of what? Of percentages. Look at this one here. The proportion of those that enjoyed sports, computer games, and shopping reduced. There's nothing that reduced there. Why? Because this graph is about, it's just about 2 categories, boys and girls. We do not have anything about days. We do not have anything about years. Assuming we have this, assuming color green is 2020 and color yellow is 2024. We can say that percentage that did sports reduced, percentage that did computer games reduced, percentage that did shopping reduced. But that's not what we have. We don't have years. You can see that they did not put years. There's nothing like 2020 here. There's nothing like 1990 here. So you cannot use the word reduced. This is what I call wrong language. Whenever you use the word reduced in a chart that does not involve 2 or more dates, you are using the wrong language. If your chart has 2 or more dates, you are to use language of what? Trend. If your chart has no dates, like what we have here now, this chart does not have any dates. This chart does not have any dates. So if your chart does not have any dates, or if your chart has just 1 date, you are to use language of comparison only. That means we must not see words like increased, decreased, fluctuate. You must not see such words in your graph. We should not see things like that. So this thing, reduced. No, 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 that's wrong. Look at this third one too. Proportion of boys and girls fluctuated. No, 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 no. Fluctuated is a word for language of trend. So you cannot use fluctuated for this graph. Why? Because this graph does not have 2 dates. This graph does not have any dates. It doesn't have any dates. So you have to use what? Language of comparison only. And that's what we have in number 2. More boys than girls enjoyed sports, computer games, and shopping, while equal proportions of both genders enjoyed music. That's accurate overview. That's accurate word. Accurate overview. All right. Let's look at another one. Let's look at another question. So we must learn to interpret our percentages correctly. All right. Look at this one here now. Holiday accommodation. Look at the question prompt. Different types of accommodation chosen by the British when they went on holiday in 2012. So what is happening here? British people, or let's say British, you don't say British people. British is already people from Britain, so you can't say British people. British has people inside it, so you can't say British people. British is British. British refers to people from Britain. So British are, there are 4 categories of British. You have British from England. A British can be from England. A British can be from Scotland. A British can be from Wales. A British can be from Northern Ireland. Okay, so those are the categories of what? Of British that we have. Now, these guys went on holiday. These guys went on what? They went on what? They went on holiday. And they stayed in different types of accommodation. They stayed in what? In different types of what? Accommodation. Some of them stayed in self-catering accommodation. Some of them stayed in caravans. Some of them stayed in camping accommodation. Some of them stayed in hotels. Okay? So British from England, or we can say English. Okay? English individuals, what's the percentage now? This is about 27%. 27% of British from England, 27% of the British from England stayed in self-catering accommodation. That's interpretation. I'm interpreting this thing for you. Then for the green one, this is about 6%. 6% of British, 6% of the British from England stayed in caravans. Okay? Yellow line represents camping. That's about 11%. 11%, or let's say 12% of the British from 10% of the British from England stayed in what? Stayed in camping. Okay? They stayed in what? They stayed in camping. Very, very important. Good word, good use of what? Good use of good interpretation of percentages. I hope you are following me. And then the red one, that is the biggest. That's about 55%. So I'll say that what? 55% of the British from where? 55% of the British, or we can just say 55% of what? Of English individuals, or the English 55% of the citizens of England stayed in what? Hotels during their holiday. That's just for this first part for England. But then let's just look at our question. Rates, can you see? This person picked rates. Again, we can't see anything like rate on this chart. You see what I said earlier on? Avoid using that word rate if you can't see rate on the chart. That's the error here. Second one, about 28% of people from England stayed in self-catering accommodation. Let's check. 28% of people were self-catering. That's color blue. That's correct. This number 2 looks like our answer. Let's check number 3. About 28% of people in England live in, no, they don't live there. They went on holiday, so they stayed there. Living means that's where you reside. When you're going for holiday, you are not living in a place. You are staying there. It's a temporary thing. So you cannot use the word live in. So we cannot use the word live in. Very, very important. Okay? Let's move on. What's the next one? The next one says, the percentage of hotel use reduced. No, nothing reduced here. Let me ask a question. Let me see who has been following me so far. Why is this word wrong? Why can't we use the word reduced? Who can tell me? What is the reason why reduced? Why can't we use the word reduced for this particular chart? Why can't we use the word reduced? Who can tell me? I want you to type in the chat box. Why can't we use the word reduced? The percentage of hotel use reduced. Who can tell me why it is wrong to use the word reduced? Why? Why can't we use the word reduced? Thank you. The word reduced connotes language of trend. And this graph does not require us to use language of trend. Why can't we use language of trend? Because this graph has just one date. And I've already said it that what? If your graph has just one date, then you are to use language of comparison only. We must not see words like increased, decreased, reduced, fluctuate. We must not see those words in your report, in your chart. Hope you get the point now. So that is the reason why that word reduced. That is the reason why it is absolutely wrong. That's the reason why this word absolutely wrong. So the answer to this question is going to be what? It's going to be that number 2. It's going to be that number 2. 28% of people from England stayed in what? Self-catering accommodation. Stayed in. That's the answer. That's the answer. This another one here. This one is also another. Let's just take this one and then we're going to wrap it up on that note. Look at the first one here. Let's look at the sentences one by one. So, percentage of Canadian donors by age group. Look at this, number 1. 18 to 24 Canadian donors have... This one is complicated sentence. It's absolutely out of it. 18 to 24 Canadian donors. Where did they say 18 to 24? Oh, see, 18 to 24. Can you see where these writers? These are real things that people write to. Somebody now sees this and says 18 to 24 Canadian donors. No. That's not the meaning. The meaning of this 18 to 24 is what? People within this age group. Look at it here. Look at it in the correct answer. Canadians within the age group of 18 to 24 years. That's what this first bar is representing. Canadians within the age group of what? 18 to 24 years. That's the meaning. Anytime you see age group, that's what it means. So you cannot say 18 to 24 Canadian donors. No, that's out of it. That's out of it. Okay? Look at the second one. Canadian donors within the age of 18 to 24 years donated 20% and 11% to charity. This is another problem here. Canadian donors donated 20%. How can you donate 20% to charity? No. You cannot donate 20% to charity. What do you donate to charity? You donate money. That's what you do. You donate money. There's nothing about money here. So you cannot say they donated 20% to charity. Assuming they put money here, that will even be another problem. Assuming they put maybe $20, $20,000, $25,000. That could even be another problem, but I'm so happy they did not even do that. So this sentence is out of it. They did not donate 20%. They did not donate 20% of their income. Some of you might be thinking about that okay, these people here, they donated 20% of their income. There's nothing on this title that suggests income. There's nothing on the y-axis that suggests income. There's nothing on the x-axis that suggests income. So it's not about 20% of their income. It's about what? 20% of the age group. That's what you have in the third option. 20% of Canadians within the age group of this is proper interpretation of percentages, ladies and gentlemen. And then look at the last one. You see that word again, rates. You see that it's not correct. You see that this issue of rates, you must be intentional. Make sure you avoid it as much as possible. I'm trying to see whether there's any question here that involves rates. I don't think there's any question that involves rates. So I'm going to share this link again with you so that you can try your hands on the quiz again and make sure you study the sentences carefully. Make sure you study the options carefully before you pick your word, before you pick your final answer. I hope you get my point. So, ladies and gentlemen, our sentences must reflect what? Accurate interpretation of what? Of percentages. Look, you study, how do you know the right percentages to use? Just look at where they wrote, wherever they have written percentages in the chart, look at it carefully. Here now, for example, look at it, they wrote percent of people. So whenever you are writing your sentences, this thing here of people, which people? People in the United States. Can you see here? That's it. It must show in your answer. Look at the correct answer here. In 2006, the proportion of those who ate in restaurant once a week was greater than the proportion in other categories. Proportion of people that ate in restaurants. People that ate in restaurants. Look at this other one here. Percentage of what? Percentage of government spending. Percentage of government spending. Percentage of what? Of government spending. That is the correct thing here. And that's what you see in the correct ones. These two are correct. This third one is not correct. Okay? Because the question says which one is inaccurate. So the one that is wrong is what you have to pick. But these other two are correct. Compared to other governments, the Portuguese government spent greater fractions of its funds. They spent greater fraction of their funds, percentage of government spending. So our sentences must reflect what? Accurate interpretation of percentages. Look at this person's answer here. This person picked this wrong option. The proportion of gross domestic product for industry increased. This is the error here. Proportion of gross domestic product. No, it's not proportion of gross domestic product. It's proportion of contribution. Look at it here. Contribution. That word should not be thrown away. You should not throw it away. It's the proportion of what? Contribution. So the proportion of industry's contribution to GDP increased. Don't say proportion of industry increased. That's error. The proportion of industry did not increase. No, the proportion of industry's contribution to GDP increased. Let me say something here. Gross domestic product is gross domestic product. Don't paraphrase it. Some people will paraphrase gross domestic product and they will write the product of the country. No. Just leave it as gross domestic product. It's just like saying you want to paraphrase Nigeria. What is the paraphrase of Nigeria? It doesn't have a paraphrase. Or you say you want to paraphrase your name. Let's assume that your name is Alice, and they say they should paraphrase your name. No, now you can't paraphrase somebody's name. Use that name as it is. It's a proper noun. That's the same thing that applies to gross domestic product. It's an economic concept. Just leave it as that. Gross domestic product. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to pause here for now. So please go through this recording again. I'm going to share the recording with you. Go through it again. There's another recording on percentages like this that I'm going to share with you so that you can go through it and understand this issue of percentages better.